So I'll be very, very fast. So the topic is standard costing. Sawa sawa. So standard costing is the topic. So I hope it's visible. Standard costing. So standard costing. I hope now it is visible. So I think now we can start. Now, when we talk about standard costing, we usually talk about various items. We usually talk about various items. So we shall start with the meaning of the word standard costing, then tumalizie variances. So we shall start from standard costing, then tutamalizia kwa variances. So let's start with the first part, and I want us to be very, very fast, no wasting time. So today we shall be very fast. Today we shall be very, very fast. Now we talk about standard. Let's find what is standard. Standard. Standard refers to a benchmark. It's a benchmark. It's a benchmark of measurement. It's a benchmark of measurement of. So it's a it's a benchmark measurement of resources usage. It's a benchmark measurement of resources usage set in defined condition. Set in a defined condition. That is what we mean when we say a standard. So a benchmark which is used to measure a particular usage or a particular resources. That standard that has been set in order to measure. So to compare the actual with the expected with the actual, it's what we call the standard. So when we have our actual production and what we expected, so the expected one forms a benchmark. So a benchmark of measurement of resources is what we call a standard, which you can call it an expected measurement. Now I can define standard costing. You can talk about standard costing, you can say it is a planned unit. It is a planned. It's a planned unit cost. It's a planned unit cost of product. It's a planned unit cost of product. Components or services are produced in a period. So when you say it's a planned unit of cost of a product, so a planned unit of cost of a product. So a planned, the keyword is the word planned. So the keyword is a word planned. So it's like expected. So you talk about standard cost, you talk about expected cost of a product or predetermined cost. So the word planned can mean expected cost, can mean predetermined cost, something that has been predetermined, lakini haijafanyika. So lakini haijafanyika. So that's what we say. Standard cost. So it is a planned unit cost or a predetermined unit cost of a product or a service or a component produced in a period. Produced in a period. Uses of standard cost. So tumesema leo tutakuwa very fast. Tunaongelea tu kidogo tukisonga. Uses of standard cost. Uses of standard cost. Number one. Uses of standard cost number one. Performance measurement. Performance measurement. That is correct. Now, how does it measure performance? So you compare actual with predetermined cost. So we compare actual with the predetermined cost. So when actual is better than the predetermined, then we can say the performance is good. But when the actual is has deviated from the actual in a negative way, so when the actual has deviated from the expected in a negative way, then you can call it it's a poor performance. Number B, cost control. Cost control. Now, once we do our performance measurement and we see that there's a deviation from a particular item, then we can come up with a control mechanism, so to control that cost. So in that case, we can come up with a control mechanism. So that one comes in. That comes in once we have the performance measurement in place. Number next, it can be used to measure to do stock valuation. So it can be used in stock valuation. That one is fine if tutafanya baadaye. Then we have it helps. It helps in determination of selling price. So I hope you hopefully. So it helps in determination of. So it helps in determination of selling price. So it helps in determination of selling price. So that's all about it. So those are some of the standard cost in use. We continue. Now we can say standard cost is built up using the following cost element, using the following cost element. So A, we can talk about material cost. We have material cost. Number B, we have labor cost. Number C, we can talk about variable overhead cost. Variable overhead cost. Then the last one, number D, fixed overhead cost. So it is built on those four elements. So we have material cost, we have labor cost, labor variable overhead cost, and we have fixed overhead cost. So it is built on that one. Now, this one is standard cost. I'm sorry about this one. Well, be very keen up. So kindly correct. It's supposed to be standard cost, not standard costing. Standard cost. So cost of one item. So not costing. Standard cost. Cost of one item. Cost of an item in unit. So cost of an item in unit. So let's talk about standard costing now. Standard costing. Standard costing it is. Na hapo mnaona isikuwe hamuoni afu ikwe I'm in my own world. So it involves establishment of predetermined cost. It involves establishment It involves establishment of predetermined. Predetermined cost. Remember the word, another name of the word predetermined cost, we can talk about expected cost. Predetermined cost, we can also talk about it as expected cost. So refer to the establishment of predetermined cost of a product or service. Of a product or of a product or services, comma, the collection of actual costs, the collection of actual costs and the comparison and comparison of actual costs with predetermined cost. So that is all about standard costing. So it involves establishment of predetermined cost. Predetermined cost is the expected cost of a product or a service, and the correction of the actual cost. And afterwards, once you correct the actual cost, then you compare the actual cost with the expected cost to measure the performance. So collection of the actual cost and comparison of actual cost with predetermined cost. So that one mostly it is used to measure performance. Now, predetermined cost is also called standard cost. Predetermined cost. Predetermined cost is also called standard cost. Tumesema standard cost pale juu. Standard cost pale juu. Hapa ukasema standard cost refer to the expected cost in units. So it's a name of standard cost. And then the difference between standard cost and actual cost is known as variance. Then ya mwisho, the difference between standard cost and actual cost is called variance. It's called variance. So the difference between the standard cost and the actual cost is called variance. So the difference between standard cost and the standard cost is predetermined cost or expected, and then actual. So we can continue on the other side. Sawa. Nasonga tu pole pole. So application of standard costing. Application of standard costing. Standard costing. So number one. What is the first application that we can think of when we talk about standard costing? Now, so you can say this one. It is used in variety It is used in variety of operation, including of operation, including number A. Number A, we can talk about process manufacturing. B, mass production. What else can we say? Because I talk about job order posting. A production. And others that we can think of. But those three are enough. Let's talk about composition of standard cost card. Composition of standard cost card. Now, remember I talk about standard cost card. It's a card which shows price of a product with their units. So the price per unit. So it is a card. So we talk about standard cost card. It's a card which shows the element with their price per unit, and with the element of the price per unit. So we're going to make some elements. Now let us define what is a standard card. Standard cost card. Standard cost card. So what is standard cost card? So standard cost card is a card which shows full details of standard costs. So is a card or a statement. You can also use the word statement. Or a statement of cost which shows full details of standard cost of each product per unit. So the keyword is the word per unit. So mostly inakwanga per unit, but still necessarily, but in most cases. So in an example, we prepare a statement, a cost statement card. Then in most likely situations, it shall be in form of cost per unit. So every item there shall be presented in form of cost per unit. That one is very, very important. It shall be in form of cost per unit. Now, example of a standard card. Example of standard card. Standard cost card. So example of a standard cost card. So nataka niteremke chini kidogo hapo. Now, so standard cost card. So X, Y, Z, standard cost card. Just an example. So we start with material. So material, you can have material, then you can say you have material X and maybe material Y. So to start with X. So for every 5 kg, it goes for 1,000. Then this one is Kenya shillings per unit. So it is 5,000 per unit. So 5 kg at 1,000, which is 5,000, but this 1,000 is 1,000 for 1 unit. You can also go to 3 kg for material. The other one times 2,000, which becomes 6,000, but 6,000 per unit. 6,000 per unit. Don't do it per unit. Then tunaenda kwa labor. Labor we can have A and B. A and B. So we can say grade A. Grade A. Now, grade B. So grade A is 6 hours. How many hours? Focus per hour. Say 1,000, for example. This will be equal to 6,000. But total 6,000 hours per unit. 6,000 hours per unit. This one is the ones I need 5,000 kg per unit. So this one is 6,000 hours per unit. Tukiweka maybe mwingine 5 hours. 800. Nakuja ngapi? 8 times 5, 45. 4,500 per unit. 400 per unit. Then talk about production of variable production overhead. Talk about variable production overhead. And we can also say equal 6 hours at 1,000. So that equal ngapi? 6,000. Equal 6,000. Then you can also talk about fixed production overhead. Fixed production overhead. How many hours? Oh no, this one is hours, but mostly we cannot rely on hours. But we start for now. The purpose of the illustration 6,000, so that you can have total cost per unit. So total cost. So remember, so it is in per unit by adding them together. Total cost. So that's a good example of a standard cost card. So iko na nini? Iko na number of kgs na cost per kg, then iko na total amount per kg per unit. No, total amount per unit. So total amount per unit. So this amount is in kg. Then data. So for example, this one represents 1 kg. So when you take 5,000 and the 3,000 of 1,200, you get this one and this one. So those are total amount represent for only 1 unit, and so on. So if you want to get for 2 units, we multiply by 2. If you want to get for 3 units, we multiply by 3, and so on. So what will be the total if we were to add them together? So kindly add, then you shall complete. Now let us go to something else. So I'm coming. Add that one.
I could get my job back. Give me a second, Sean. I won't let you down. I'm too good for this. Download the INM Bank app or visit any INM Bank branch and open your account today. INM Bank on your side.
Did you know you can make e-citizen payments via DTB now? Start 3 instant cards to use the DTB and 24/7 card for visits any of the 87 B2B branches countrywide. Miles of passion. You all right? We will be left all alone. We're going. Get out of here. You all right?
Yeah, we continue. So add the total as we finalize so that we introduce variance. So I want us to introduce variance. So before we introduce variance,
You deserve a picture and you'll have one. Going to July. This will be just a bad memory.
so my phone, it is down, but let me see how go about it now. So I was saying I want to introduce variances. So let us add these items so that we see what ikiwa honey. But that's a good example. It's an example of a standard cost for 5,000. We shall prepare one from our past paper. Plus 6,000 plus 4500 plus 4500 plus 6,000 plus 6,000. So today ikuwe aje? Lazima tumalize topic kabisa. 33,500. 3,500. So utakuwa very fast. So nikiwa haraka sana, I'll just share the video later so that we save a lot of time. Okay. Now let's talk about type of standards. Type of standards. Logo two. So type of standards, we have the first one, ideal standard. So sijui ndavuta side gani ama niendeleshe the other side. Let me just do a continuation for now. Hapo, I think hapo itatoshea. I think that one will be enough. So start with the ideal standard. This is young one I charge. So
So
ideal standard as our first one. Do you set them first?
To marry and to stay together, to become a family, to have children.
Sawa.
I can't tell him I was wrong in that.
So you have ideal standard, we have attainable standard, we have current standard, and you have basic standard. We start with the first one. So type of standard. So type of standard number one. Ideal standard.
I can't hear him anymore.
So when we talk about ideal standard, it's a standard which can be attained under perfect condition. So a standard which can be attained under perfect condition, which can be attained under perfect condition. So a standard which can be attained under perfect condition. Now, I open it visible. Najua nime shift nini. So let us write. So it is a standard. A standard which can be attained under perfect
Our only hope right now is
or working condition.
Tigers want to get in there.
The perfect working condition. So standard which can be attained under perfect working condition. i.e. no allowance for wastage. No allowance for wastage. wastages. I think imetosha. So hakuna haja tuongee mambo mingi. So that ones can be attained under perfect conditions. So there is no allowance for. Then you have attainable standard. Attainable standards or standard. So attainable standard, and we can say standards which assume efficiency level of operation. So a standard which assumes an efficient level of operation. So tunasema a standard which assumes an efficient level of operation, but which include allowance for normal losses, but which includes allowances for normal losses, but which include allowances for normal losses. So we can take it, if you allow allowances for normal losses, we can also add waste or what? You can also have something to do with machine downtime. So when we have machine break, the machine is not working. So machine break time or downtime. Number 3. So that's attainable. So you can so that one can be attained under efficient operation. Sawa sawa. So we go to current standard. Current standard. So what can we say about current standard? A standard based on current level of efficiency in terms of allowance for breakdown, wastage, and so on. So that one is the current level of efficiency. So a standard based on the keyword is the word current level of efficiency. It's not assume. A standard based on the current level of efficiency in terms of allowance for breakdown. In terms of allowance for breakdown, wastage. So breakdown, wastage, and the losses. And the losses. Then the last one is a basic standard. Number 4. We'll talk about basic.
Then we have a sweet surprise for you.
Wow.
Basic standard. No, this one is the last one. So when I talk about basic standard, a standard established for use over a long period of time. So we can say a standard established so a standard which is established for a longer period of time. So a standard established for use. Established for use. So established for use over the long period of time.
Your grandfather is off rescuing her. Who's the biggest boss of them all?
Over
Right here.
the long
Have some bread to lessen
period.
the shock.
So a standard established for use over a long period of time, from which the current standard can be developed. From which the current standard can be developed. The current standard can be developed. Can be developed. That one is all about the basic standard. Now, ndakutumia kwa group impact of standard. That one I will screenshot and then to make a group together with the summary of standard cost. So that's how we mark the end of standard costing. So start from variances. So that will mark the end of standard costing. We start from variances. So ndakutumia impact of standard costing or of standards on employees' behavior. So ndakutumia utaandika tu chini, then you read. Then problems of setting standards. So what are some of the problems of setting standards? One is the inflation. So one is inflation. So in an example, nakwambia you state any problems associated with setting a standard. One of them is inflation. So inflation keep changing, it changes the prices of materials and so on from time to time. And therefore, maintaining a particular standard is very hard because it keep on changing. So inflation. And then another one, setting efficiency when it comes to standard costing is very hard. So that's another problem. So it is very hard to set standards, to set efficiency for operation when it comes to standard costing. So that's it's another problem. Nakutumia notes. And then ya mwisho, how to incorporate needs for continuous improvement. Now, it is hard to add other things as the process continues. So for standard costing, so when we are carrying out standard costing, it is very hard to add other needs when it comes to standard costing, and therefore that one also poses a challenge. So I will share with you. So ndio natuma kwa group. I'm sharing to the group as we speak. But I'm sending form of a screenshot. So it will be one page, just one page. So in case you need it, kama itaonekana utaniambia. So nimetuma hiyo. So let us continue now. Let us continue now to variance analysis. So this is where we shall concentrate. So tunarudi on the beginning of our page.
You're trapped in a dark place.
So talk about variance analysis. Now we had defined what is variance sometimes back, but we are yet to define it again. So we are yet to define it again.
Make life worth living. That's why you are my perfect ending.
I hope that it is fine. And may move sana.
You'll be joined.
Sasa hapo iko sawa, I think. Now let us change from the word standard costing to variance analysis. Now let us move from so that one is lesson 2, which is the final lesson. So lesson 2, which is our final lesson for standard costing. So lesson 2, yeah, I call it variance analysis. So we call it variance analysis.
Woman, shut your mouth. You have no right to speak to me in that way.
So variance
Because you're vehemently sacrificing
analysis.
also your son. You're sentencing him and that poor young woman to their death. He has never considered himself my son.
So variance analysis.
To justify what you're doing.
This one is very, very important. This one is very, very important. And this is where you can find them in past paper. The most of past paper come from this point. Now we talk about variance. There's difference between the planned or budgeted or standard cost with actual. So we start with the definition of variance. So variance.
I am the boss around here.
Variance is the difference.
My brother and my dad are both in the mine.
So it is the difference. Kama nimetoka kwa laini, but hapa ndio sasa tunafaa tuwe very, very keen. So it's the difference between the planned cost. Planned.
We should also trust our parents. I'm sure they'll be able
Planned.
to rescue our siblings, and I'll stay with you, all right?
Budgeted. Standard. Standard cost. Standard cost. And the actual cost incurred. And actual cost incurred. So when we compare the actual cost and the standard cost, that's what called the variance. Now remember to compare the other name of standard cost is the budgeted cost or the planned cost, meaning those are the estimated costs. So they have been predetermined. So another one is also predetermined costs. So those are costs which we expect to incur in future. So once we incur them, then the actual cost that we have incurred now and what we expect is what we call the variance. So the difference between the two. Now, variance analysis, we also define variance. So what is variance analysis? Now, when we talk about variance analysis, in most cases, we can say that this is the evaluation of performance by means of variance. So it is the evaluation of performance. So refers to evaluation of performance. So we can say this is the evaluation of performance by means of variance. By means of variance. Who's timely reporting? Who's timely? Who's timely reporting? Who's timely reporting should maximize. Should maximize. So what should it maximize? The opportunity of the management action. So it should maximize the opportunity of the management action.
Upgrades to energy efficient appliances. Look for appliances with Energy Star rating.
Management
energy compared to standard model.
Action. Now, this management action is the action that management should take when we have either a deviation in terms of a negative deviation or a positive. Now, but on a timely manner. So variance analysis comes in that equation. Now it should report the variances on a timely manner, so that the management can take action where necessary. So that the management can take action where necessary. And therefore, that is all about variance analysis. So it should be on a timely manner. Now there's a table here. We have a table here. I'm going to send this table in your group also. then we shall go through it because this table is quite big for me to draw it here. So, but I'm going to share it in your group, but it shows type of variances and the examples. So let me share with you in your groups. So in case you don't have that table, which I request, but I'm sharing to the group. So right away, go to. But we shall explain those variances now in details. So there are quite many, but we shall know how to handle them. So I'm sharing in the group. Hopefully the other one is Rifika. Sawa hiyo nimetuma. Mtaiangalia baadaye. So let me continue. So variances can be divided into main 3 groups. So variances can be divided into can be divided into 3 main group. Can be divided into main 3 group. Number 1, variable cost variance. Variable cost variance. Number B, fixed production. Fixed production. Fixed production. Overhead variance. Overhead variance. And then number C, sales variance. Sales variance. Now let us state some of the types of variance as we continue. Now we start with the first one. Let us start with the first one, total direct material cost. So hapa ndio kuna kazi. Total direct material cost. Total direct material cost. And what does that mean? So it's a difference between what output actually costs. You can say it is the difference. It's the difference between what output actually costs. So it's the difference between what output actually costs and what it shall cost and what it shall cost and what it shall cost and what it should have cost and what it should have cost in terms of material. In terms of material. So that is very, very important. So tumesema it is the difference between the output actually cost. The difference between what output actually costs is the difference between what output actually costs and what it should have cost in terms of material. So this is the formula. So formula for total direct material cost. Total direct material cost. So standard material cost per unit. So is equals to standard material cost per unit. Standard material cost per unit. times actual unit produced times actual units produced times actual units produced minus actual cost of material minus actual cost of material. Sio kama hiyo inaonekana, niweke hivyo. So unaanza na huwa katikati. So unaanza na standard material cost per unit. You multiply with the actual cost. You multiply with the actual units produced. Then ukishapata you minus the actual cost of the material. You minus the actual cost of the material. I think that one is explanatory in that order. I think that one is very explanatory in that order.
Then we have a sweet surprise for you.
Wow.
Acha niweke ikiwa presentable kidogo.
Hearts bound by undeniable love, a story full of secrets and lies that unfold into unbearable pain.
So ukishafanya hiyo nafanya yote, so minus here, this one is minus, that one is fine. I think it tuko sawa kabisa. Now let us continue. Bado tujamaliza total material cost. Naendelea still under material. So this one is total material cost variance hapa. Nimesahau kuandika jina variance. Kindly add. So total direct material cost variance. So total direct material cost variance. Now let's talk about direct material price variance. So A under hapa total direct material price variance.
What are you doing here, Dan?
As Kenya faces unprecedented times, join us.
So that one is part A.
On the impact of the last few days' activity.
Part A, what will you do? Now, what can we say of direct material price variance? Direct material price variance, we can say the difference between the standard cost. So it is the difference. You come in on a kana. Let me remove this one. Hapo. Taki nikue out of nini? Taki nikue out of board. So I think hapo iko sawa. So tunasema it's the difference between the standard cost and the actual cost. It's the difference between standard cost and actual cost. So it is the difference between standard cost and actual cost of the actual quantity of material. Of the actual quantity of material. The actual quantity of material used or purchased. That one is very, very important. And you can give the formula. So is equals to, so this is the formula for direct material price variance. So direct material price is equals to standard price. Standard price minus Standard price minus actual.
It's the second day of July.
So minus actual price.
The first Tuesday of the month. This are the highlights.
So standard price
Exit
minus actual price. Actual price, we can also call it standard price. We can call not standard price, we can call it quantity purchased. This one can also mean quantity purchased. Then we multiply with the actual quantity. Actual quantity. Multiply with actual. We multiply with actual quantity.
Shut down. Highways leading into the capital block.
Actual quantity.
Should engage police.
So tumesema another name of actual quantity hapa, actual price. Actual price you can also call it
Rising above the protest. Members of parliament
but then now it's start to somewhat. Let us use these figures. So, but it's good to differentiate between actual price and standard price. So that one is number 1A. So that one is number 1. Number B, direct material usage variance. Direct material usage variance. So direct material usage variance. So I think that itabidi nimeenda on the other side. So itabidi nimekuja this side. We explore on the others on this side.
Mr. Isaac Mora has tonight declined to be on the explainer, canceling just minutes before this live newscast, even though he personally requested to be on the program here on Citizen Television tonight. Even while the government spokesperson not to be here to speak to the situation in the country, the explainer must go on.
Nataka niende on the katikati side so that we can utilize the space.
Now, the death toll from protests rose to 41 tonight after 2 more people were killed and scores injured.
Hapo iko sawa, anatumai. Songa pole pole. So we have here. Lazima tumalize leo. Now hii nao nimeapa leo. We need to finish this one so that next we go to activity based costing. So next nataka tuende activity based costing ama tuende flexible budget, budget and budgetary control. When flexible na hizo zingine cash budget kama itakuwa possible in one class the better. But we need to do more. We need to do more. So that's why ninasema leo ili tujikaze lakini tumalize. Now tuko tumefanya total material price variance, so we go to usage. So we go to usage variance. So inaitwa number B, total direct material usage. So the keyword is about usage variance. Now you can see this one. This is the difference. So this is the difference between the total quantity of material. The difference between the standard quantity
taking the number to 682. There were 55 arrests and 3 more
of material that should have been used that
The two who died included a civilian and a policeman who succumbed
should have been used
in Nairobi and Migori.
that should have been used for the number of units for the number of units
The military was not sure
for the number of units actually produced and now you compare this one with actual quantity of material used and actual quantity of material used. Quantity of
Now, the Chelsea movement is
material used, of quantity material
part of the country
used,
on the fifth
varied at standard cost,
as acts committed by hooligans.
varied at standard cost,
The process that has been called to push for reforms in governance can
valued at standard cost
initially started off as a
per unit of material.
the government to do away with the Finance Bill 2024 has seen thousands of youthful Kenyans take to the streets to protest.
So that one is on. So the difference between the standard quantity of material that should have been used for the number of units actually produced and what was actually produced for the standard cost of that material. And you can see this is the formula. So standard usage minus actual usage minus actual usage. Am I treating standard quantity? Let's call it standard quantity minus actual quantity used, and then we multiply it with the standard price.
Some of the online personalities who have been associated with the Occupy protests.
We multiply it with the standard price. So that is all about it. So A and B. So that marks the end of total direct material cost. Now we need to remember now another formula for this one. So if come to me formula standard cost times actual quantity minus actual cost unit, come to me here, then another formula for total direct material cost variance will be this one. So total direct material cost material cost variance. So ukiangalia kwa notes zetu hapo juu kwenye tumepeana hapo juu. So tukiona kwa notes zetu hapo juu tumepeana that for you to get the total direct material cost variance, tunachukua the standard material cost per unit, na multiply by actual units produced, and then tukishapata hiyo tuna minus the actual cost of the material. Now kama tunatumia hiyo, then you can use this one which is equals to total direct material price variance plus total direct material usage variance. So this one like a usage. Let's use the word usage. Total actual quantity usage, which is amount used. So this is another formula which we can use. So that's all about part A, part 1 of the material cost. So that was all about number 1, total direct material cost. Total direct material cost. Let's go to number 2. So to number 2 now. Number 2, we go to total direct labor cost variance. Total direct labor Cost variance.
Now, like the violent confrontation witnessed as police battled a section of youthful protesters took to the streets of the Nairobi Central Business District, armed with only.
So narrator number 2. That one is number 2. Now, what is this? What do you mean when you talk about total? Total direct labor cost variance. What do we mean? Total direct labor cost variance. What do we really mean? So this is what we mean. So I'm going to remove this one. Tuteremke chini kidogo.
Now is getting back in the anti-government protest. He says the destruction of his business, especially in the capital central business district.
Now, I hope that one is a bit clear. So total direct labor cost variance. Total direct labor cost variance. So what do we mean when we talk about total direct labor cost variance? So the direct labor cost variance is the difference between what the output actually costs and what it should have cost in terms of labor. So we can say the difference between output actually cost. So it is the difference between. So it is the difference between what output actually costs. What output actually costs. What output actually costs. And what it should have cost. And what it should have cost in terms of labor. So the difference between what should have cost and what it actually costs, but in terms of what? So the keyword is the word in terms of labor. So this is the formula for total direct labor cost. So formula for total direct labor cost variance. So total direct labor cost variance, standard labor cost per unit. So you take. So we take standard labor cost.
And I've now posted, maybe I can meet one-on-one person, maybe I can find somebody who can lead me to my destiny.
So standard labor cost per unit. Tomorrow with the actual units produced. Actual units. Actual units produced. Then kila kitu minus na the actual cost of labor. So then everything we will minus actual cost of labor. Actual cost
we are having those people
of labor. So everything you minus everything minus the actual cost of labor. Now we have two types also. Kama vile tulisema kwa direct material cost, tuko na mbili hapa. So A, then the first one A, we call it labor efficiency variance. So direct labor.
In and around Nairobi Central.
Not it wasn't a Ghani. Let us start with direct labor rate variance. Wasn't a direct labor rate variance. So tuko na mbili hapa pia. Na hizo mbili ukiziadd tutapata total. So direct labor
Now the number of
rate
those injured from the protest continued to rise.
Variance.
25 more people admitted
Direct
at the National Hospital.
labor rate variance. So we want to explain that one.
Rise overnight following violent confrontations between police and
You got to rush hapo.
witnessed in most parts of.
But I think it can. Let us explain it. So we can say it's the difference between the standard cost and the actual cost. of the actual number of hours used. So the difference between standard cost, so you can say it is the difference. The difference between standard cost. So it's the difference between the standard cost and the actual cost and the actual cost of the actual units kama nimetoka on the nini of the actual number of hours. So hapa tuko kwa hours, on the actual number of hours used. That's all about it. So when we talk about that, the difference between the standard cost and the actual cost. So the difference between the standard cost and the actual cost of the actual number of hours used, then that one is what we mean by the direct labor rate variance. So the difference between the standard cost and the actual cost, but in terms of hours, we can give a formula of it. So formula for it. So the formula for it is equals to standard rate minus actual rate multiplied with the actual hours. So let me.
The businessman has been arrested and disarmed after he opened fire on protesters in the county. The businessman engaged the rowdy protesters who seemingly wanted to invade his business.
In this video,
So to endelea, so we just move slowly to
try and prevent the protesters from accessing its premises. In the Tuesday afternoon demos, two people reported disabling guns of wounds as the businessman opened fire. His actions further provoking the protesters who invaded and
so I hope that one will be visible.
Bearing the brunt of the protesters' rage.
So the formula for direct labor rate variance. So the formula for direct labor rate variance. So Rudy Apple.
The Directorate of Criminal Investigations has confirmed the arrest of the businessman, saying he was disarmed as in the.
So this is the formula.
The Tuesday demos that were likely peaceful in the county.
Standard rate
after this incident
minus actual
those that were caught in the act
minus actual rate, then we multiply by actual hours. So this is the formula for direct labor rate variance. So that's the formula for direct labor rate variance. So that one is the formula for direct labor rate variance. So that was number A. To go to B. So the B of it, we talk about labor efficiency variance. Direct labor efficiency variance. So direct
to the capital city of Nairobi, which was
direct
shut down for the entire day, with all roads
labor
leading to the city barricaded by
efficiency
we erected barricades. Now, the Nairobi Mombasa
variance.
no longer in Machakos County was severely impacted.
So direct labor efficiency variance, and we can say the difference between the standard labor hours. Difference between standard of labor. It is the difference between. It's the difference between standard of labor
and burning tires. The Nairobi Mombasa highway was not affected.
Standard.
Protesters occupying both sides and trapping traffic.
Standard of labor that should have been used. That that should have been used. That should have been used for a number of units. For a number of units are actually produced. So actually produced, and actual number of labor hours and an actual number of the actual number of labor hours used valued at standard rate hours, valued at standard rate hours. So that is very important. Valued at standard labor, valued at standard labor rate hours, hours rate. So we give the formula. So the difference between the standard labor hours, so the standard, that is expected ones, with the actual labor hours, but it's valued at what rate? The standard rate. So this one, so another than standard hours, standard hours, you multiply with actual hours, then valued at standard rate. Valued as standard rate per hour, valued at standard rate per hour. So tunasema the difference between the standard hours and the actual hours valued at the standard rate per hour. Valued at standard rate per hour. So that one is all about the total direct labor cost variance. Now, so we can also add this formula.
They maintain that their peaceful process will continue. We're going to reach back to that.
So we can add this formula and say total direct labor cost variance, total direct labor cost variance is equals to, so total direct labor cost variance is equals to, so this one, huyu hapa. So come on, to me formula, you can use this one. So if you don't want to use this one, so if you don't want to use the copying, sio hii tukupeana yake au ndio hapa. So kama unataka kutumia hii, so kama unataka kutumia this formula, you can use this one now yenye napeana. So this one, so standard labor cost per unit multiplied with the actual units produced minus actual, kuliko kama unataka kutumia this one, je kama inaonekana. Hope inaonekana ama ulikuwa umeandika pale nyuma. So total direct labor cost variance tukianza pale juu mambo na labor. Tuseme ziko to standard labor cost per unit. Tuseme ni standard labor cost per unit. Haionekani minus actual cost. But for now, kama unataka kutumia hiyo, you can use this one now. Ninaandika hapa. You can start with direct labor rate variance, labor rate variance plus direct labor efficiency variance. Efficiency variance. So kama unataka kutumia hiyo ingine unatumia hii. So hiyo ingine ni gani? Hiyo ingine ilikuwa inaenda hivi. Acha tuwakumbushe hapa. So kama unataka kutumia hii yenye ilikuwa nimepeana ya kwanza pale, ilikuwa inaenda standard labor cost per unit, labor cost per unit, we multiply with actual units. So in another formula, actual units. So kama kutumia huyu minus actual cost. Of labor. So it's either you use ya juu ama ya chini. So ni wewe unaamua. So either utumie ya juu ama utumie ya chini. So you have two formula. So or. So it is either. So hiyo tulikuwa tumepeana pale tukianza. Tulikuwa tumepeana pale tukianza. So that is all about. So that's all about the direct material price, direct material cost variance, and the direct labor cost variance. So tumemaliza mbili. So direct labor cost. Na mkisa tumebakisha mbili, tumebakisha variable cost variance na fixed. Lazima tumalize. So lazima tujikaze. Tujikaze kabisa. So let's go to the original position. Those notes are very important. That's when I make sure nimewapea hizo notes.
What is for 10 weeks? The capital city has been engulfed with smoke. Protesters engaged in security personnel regarding patrol behind the government demonstration. However, the protests are now taking a toll on businesses, which now hold the grant of criminals who have infiltrated those rejecting legislation. Along major streets in the city on Thursday, a few business owners who had opened their businesses had to close moments after police started to disperse protesters who had gathered in the city center. Majority who had concerns over the planned protest kept off, and for those who opened, armed themselves with batons to keep criminals away. However, some were not lucky. All of these two shopping kiosks next to Odeon Cinema lost his entire stock after going positive during confrontation with security officers. Public service operators were also hard hit, as accessing the city center was a nightmare.
Now,
it was a double loss for the Matatu operators who, despite not accepting the CBD, were unable to get
so,
the solution. A case in point,
tunaendelea.
like the Wayanki Way, where protesters had barricaded their own
So, pole tu.
about a kilometer from the main stage, as protesters engaged police in running battles.
Sawa sawa. So let's go to the next. So tumemalizana na material na labor. So tunaenda kwa overheads. Then tumalize na fixed. Fixed ndio ya mwisho actually.
We also have to look at mechanism.
So let's go to.
It is also functional towards progress.
This man suspected to have snatched.
So we go to total variable production overhead variance. Total production variable overhead variance. So tunaenda kwa variable. So we go to variable.
The business community is hopeful that an amicable solution will be reached between the president and the protesters to allow for resumption of normalcy for smooth running of business.
Well, in the meantime, the government tonight, through the Ministry of Interior, has warned planners of Thursdays and Sundays protests to call them off.
So we talk about total variable production overhead.
Secretary says the government is determined to stop protesters who he said were intent on terrorizing the public and harming the country.
Total
He also stated that the planners, executives, and
variable
of the protest will soon be unmasked after completion of ongoing evidential analysis.
production
Which is the last part of that statement. that came from
Variable.
the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and National.
Total production variable. Total production. Total variable production overhead.
Against the people of
Overhead.
Kenya, and the impunity of dangerous criminal gangs must end at whatever cost. The government is determined to stop criminals aiming to terrorize.
Total variable production overhead. Total production variable overhead.
Politicize crime. That is a statement that is coming out today from the Ministry of Interior and National Administration.
So, what do we say about this one? The difference between the difference between what the output should have cost. So, it is the difference. Is the difference between what output should have cost. Is the difference between what output should have cost and what it did cost. And what it did cost. And what it did cost in terms of variable production overhead. In terms of variable production in terms of variable production overhead. This is the formula for total production variable overhead. So the formula is given as follows. So standard variable overhead cost per unit. Variable overhead cost per unit. We multiply with the actual units produced. We multiply with actual units produced. Then everything multiply with the actual cost of variable production overhead. We minus with actual cost of variable production overhead. Now we also have some parts here kama tumesema kule nyuma. So apart from the formula, so we have some parts. So the first part we can talk about is variable overhead expenditure variance. So we can talk about variable overhead expenditure variance. Variable overhead expenditure variance. Then you can say this is the difference. This is the difference between the amount of the variable overhead between the amount of variable overhead that should have been incurred. Should have been incurred. It should have been incurred in actual hours. In actual hours of so this is the difference between the amount of the variable overhead that should have been incurred in the actual hours. The actual hours actually actually worked. So actually worked. And the actual amount of variable overhead incurred. And actual amount of variable overhead. Variable overhead incurred.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us.
Card.
Explainer. Now,
You can give the formula.
public wage over new
Now this is equals to
measures. The salaries
budgeted variable overhead.
has announced salary increments for state officers,
Budgeted
members of parliament, and cabinet secretaries, among those that will
variable overhead rate multiply with actual hours. Then we minus actual variable overhead cost. Actual variable overhead cost. That is number A. You go to B. That is variable overhead expenditure. The keyword is the word expenditure. The keyword is the word expenditure. So we go to variable overhead efficiency, variance, PD. Variable overhead efficiency. So the keyword is the word efficiency. Variance. And then you can say, let me. We are saying variable overhead efficiency variance. And you can say this is the difference between the standard cost. This is the difference between the standard cost So this is the difference between the standard cost. So this is the difference between the standard cost of hours that should have been worked. So the difference between the standard cost of hours that should have been worked. So this is the difference between the standard cost of hours that should have been worked. So the number of units. So the number of units actually produced. So the number of units actually produced for the number of units actually produced and the cost of the units actually incurred and cost of the units actually produced. The cost of the units actually produced. And you can give the formula. Can give the formula here. How does the formula goes? So standard hours of actual production. So it is equals to standard hours of actual production. Standard hours of actual production minus actual hours taken actual hours taken. So actual hours taken to produce the output. Produce the output. Then everything multiplied with budgeted variable overhead rate. Budgeted variable overhead. Budgeted variable overhead rate. Now, teremke chini kidogo. Sawa sawa. So we are on a move. We are on a move. We need to finish. So, so I'm saying we are on a move, and we keep on moving. So I wanted to give the formula for this one. So standard hours of the actual production. How do you get it? Standard hours. So standard hours of actual production. So standard hours of actual production, this one. How do you get it? So standard hours of actual production. So it's equal to number of units. Number of units. Number of units produced. Number of units produced. We multiply by standard usage per unit. Standard usage per unit. Standard usage. That one is the standard usage. I'm a standard quantity usage per unit. So that is all about the variable overhead. So you have two of them. And remember, for you to get the total variable overhead production, you can use this formula. Standard overhead cost per unit, multiplied with the actual, then you minus the actual variable production cost. Kama sio hivyo, then you can use this formula. So another formula to get total variable production overhead, or so total variable production overhead. Production overhead. Total variable production overhead will be given as. So tutachukua the variable overhead expenditure variance. Variable overhead expenditure So variable overhead expenditure variance. Then you add variable overhead efficiency variance. Efficiency variance. So variable overhead efficiency variance. Sawa sawa. So tunasema total variable expenditure variance. It's a variable overhead expenditure. So total variable production overhead is equals to total variable expenditure variance plus variable overhead efficiency variance. That's all about it. So let's go to the last one of the variables that we need to do. Okay. So we get the last one, which is the total. We talk about fixed overheads. So fixed overhead. That one is very, very important. So we need to see about fixed overhead. Let us see, look at it. And that one will be our final theories on this item. So that maswali zitakuwa mingi. Maswali zitakuwa kwa wingi sana. So let us try that one. So we keep on trying and trying and trying and trying. You know, the journey is not easy, but we keep on trying. So we don't give up on the way. So we do it and we do it and we do it and we do it until we accomplish what we want. So, and also you like my videos so that we can all benefit. You like my videos on YouTube. So you can find me on YouTube now. So we talk about total fixed production, total fixed production overhead cost. Overhead cost variance. So kuna kitu nimeona hapa hivi. Let me go, let's take you back. Panyuma kidogo. So don't forget to insert the word pale. Sorry. So don't forget to insert kwa hii ya kwanza tulianza nayo. Tulianza na total variable production overhead. So overhead variance. Remember we are talking about variance. So this one, don't forget what the word variance. Don't forget what the word variance. So we're talking about variances. So you're talking about the variances. Now let's go to the other side. Sorry, Aish. Sawa sawa. Umetoka kidogo nje. Acha ikaria hapo juu imekataa. Sasa so acha ikaria hapo. But I hope inaonekana. So hopefully inaonekana. So I want to continue. Nimalizie this one kabisa. So we have also several of them. So we have a total fixed overhead variance. You can confidently say. So what can we say about this one? The difference between fixed overhead, it is the difference between fixed overhead. So it's the difference between fixed overhead in CAD and fixed production overhead and fixed production overhead and fixed production overhead absorbed and fixed production overhead absorbed. In other words, it is under or over absorption. So you say that under or over absorption, that's when you stay in the material costing. That's when you switch in material cost. So this is the formula. So the formula is given as follows. Standard fixed overhead cost per unit. Standard fixed overhead cost per unit times indiandika hapa standard fixed overhead cost per unit tuitoshe overhead cost per unit multiply with actual units produced, multiply with actual units produced, then everything ukishapata you less actual fixed cost, actual cost of the fixed production overhead, actual cost of fixed production overhead. That is all. So standard fixed overhead cost per unit, divided with actual units cost, units produced, then everything minus by the actual cost of the fixed production. So that is the first one. Fixed overhead expenditure variance. Fixed overhead expenditure variance. Fixed overhead expenditure variance. We can confidently say is difference between is the difference between budgeted fixed. Is the difference between the budgeted fixed overhead expenditure, fixed overhead expenditure. So it's the difference between the budgeted fixed overhead expenditure and actual fixed overhead and actual fixed overhead expenditure. Fixed overhead expenditure. Expenditure hapo inaonekana kama nimeenda toka kwa nini? Sawa sawa. The formula. This is the formula for fixed overhead expenditure variance. So fixed overhead expenditure variance is given by budgeted fixed overhead, budgeted fixed overhead minus actual fixed overhead. Tuko sawa. So tumemalizana na mambo na E, fixed overhead expenditure variance. Kwa fixed overhead volume variance, fixed overhead volume variance. Fixed overhead volume variance. So tunasonga tukisonga. So now I can confidently remove that one and move mbele kidogo. So I hope it is visible and you can easily understand the concept. Now, what is that one? What is the fixed overhead volume variance? Now, fixed overhead volume variance, we can talk about that one. Now we can talk. We can say so fixed overhead volume. Fixed overhead. Let me see ngapi. Just two of them. Fixed overhead volume capacity variance. Here fixed overhead volume efficiency variance. So for fixed overhead volume variance. So fixed overhead volume variance is the difference. It is the difference. So it is the difference. So fixed overhead volume variance. So the difference between actual and so the difference between the actual and budgeted production volume and budgeted production volume. Come out, we are within the allocation of the table. So we are within volume multiplied by budgeted fixed overhead. Budgeted fixed overhead. Budgeted fixed overhead. Absorption rate per unit. absorption rate per unit. Now you can give the formula. So it is equal to budgeted volume. Budgeted volume. Then we minus actual volume. Then we less actual volume. Then we multiply with the budgeted fixed cost overhead per unit. Then we multiply with budgeted. Multiply with budgeted fixed overhead. Fixed overhead. Fixed overhead per unit. Per unit. Iko sawa kabisa. So that's all about the fixed overhead volume variance. So we go to efficiency. Then to measure capacity. So we go to efficiency. Then to measure capacity. So I'm going to do this one. So let us go to the next one. See, let me give you the definition here. So fixed overhead volume efficiency variance. Fixed overhead volume efficiency variance. Volume efficiency variance. And what can we say? Is the difference between the standard cost? You can say difference between standard cost. So difference between standard cost of hours that have been worked, of hours that would have been worked, that would have been worked, that would have been worked for number of units, the number of units, for the number of units. So inatumia for the number of units actually produced, and cost for the units actually produced and cost for the units actually produced. And the cost for the units actually produced. Ni kama hata pen yangu inaisha rangi, but we need to finish. Sawa. So we give the formula. So what is the formula for fixed overhead volume efficiency variance? So is equal to standard hours. So tuipatia hapa juu, so tunapeana formula hapa juu. So I'm saying, nitaandikia somewhere hapa. The formula is equals to standard hours. Standard hours minus actual hours. Minus actual hours. Actual hours, then we multiply by budgeted fixed overhead rate. Budgeted fixed overhead overhead rate. Then ya mwisho, now we'll go to the last one. So after fixed overhead, volume efficiency variance, we'll talk about fixed overhead volume capacity variance. So as number D, fixed overhead volume capacity variance. So my pen imeisha, let me pick another pen. Variance. Let us give the definition. This is the definition, and we can say capacity variance. So we can say difference. So this is the difference between budgeted hours worked, budgeted hours worked and actual hours worked, and actual hours worked, and actual hours worked multiplied by standard absorption rate. The standard absorption rate. Rate. The formula. So it's equals to actual hours. Minus budgeted hours. So actual hours minus budgeted hours. Then multiply with the budgeted. Fixed overhead rate. Fixed overhead rate. That is all. So reason for variance I'm sent to the group. So this one I'm sent to the group. If you want it, you can take to me. Reason for variances. This one I'm sending to the group as a screenshot. So for favorable and advanced. I'm sending it to the group. Anyway, that one marks the end of our class. It was a very long class. So we shall start tomorrow with lesson 2 of standard costing. And we shall do in specific questions. So have a good night. See you tomorrow. So for more, you can inbox me and so on. So tomorrow we shall have a lot of questions. Have a good night.